How's it going, everyone? My name is Steven. I am the host of the ACC Podcast from Horizon. I am here with Eli Ben-Sasson, the CEO and co-founder of StarkWare. It is an absolute pleasure and honor to have you here on the show. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Very good, Steven. How are you?
I'm doing great. It looks like a beautiful day where you are, and
Yes,
I think it's a great day to be alive here, May 2025. Obviously, we're going to go into an in-depth conversation, but this is Founders Stories. And for viewers watching this video, this is really an opportunity to get behind the brain and the mind and hear about the life of Eli here, as he has been a huge proponent in the space and beyond, an inventor of one of the most impactful layer twos that has brought to life, I would say, Ethereum after it had some struggles and some clear points that it could improve. So, Eli, my first question to you is really just how in the world did you get your start? I know you're a mathematician. I'm sure you have a lot of labels for yourself, but I just want to throw it over to you first and straight out of the gate, just how did you find yourself where you are today?
I have a great story. So I often started by saying, a mathematician walks into a blockchain conference, which is what happened to me in May 2013. I was a mathematician. I was a professor of theoretical computer science, and I was sort of peddling my research. And I landed upon the Bitcoin conference in San Jose, May 2013. That was about 12 years ago. And that changed my life because I realized, first I felt it. It took me a lot of time to process and understand why, but I realized that the work I've been doing could have huge impact on scaling and privacy in blockchain. And ever since then, I've started pursuing that path.
Yeah. So would you call yourself a mathematician if somebody comes up to you and asks you one title for yourself? What would you title yourself?
I'd say a curious person who likes to do a lot
I
of
like
stuff.
that.
I, yeah, I used to do math research. These days, I, mostly run a company. But I had a period in my life where the first description that would come to mind was mathematician, or rather, theoretical computer scientist, which is a branch of mathematics and computer science.
Yeah, love that. So what about when you were a kid? When you were a kid growing up, was there anything that you think were early signs of what you see in front of you and what you involve yourself in day to day?
Yes and no. Yes, I was always extremely curious and had very high aspirations. But no, I wanted to be, as a young child, I wanted to be a policeman or fireman. I spent a few years in the United States, and firemen were a big thing. Um, then I wanted to go into humanities, history, and stuff like that. Then in university, I studied actually biology and computer science to go into neuroscience. And I sort of chanced upon the math thing almost by mistake.
Yeah, yeah. So what year would you say that your career really started to take shape, and what were you doing before you really got head over heels into blockchain?
So there were several very important periods. I had a career as a professor of theoretical computer science. And then 2013, I realized that my math, and by then it was already implemented, has a lot of bearing on blockchain, on Bitcoin, and almost on nothing else. And since then, I started veering towards entrepreneurship. I was one of the co-founders. I was a founding scientist of Zcash, which was the first deployment of general purpose zero knowledge proofs in any product. And in 2018, I decided to leave my academic position and join StarkWare as a co-founder.
Love that. Yeah, Zcash is a probably a protocol that people have heard of before, and that really kind of gets us looking over the edge of zero knowledge proofs and the whole idea of Stark to begin with. So, my curiosity as a user of cryptocurrency these days and understanding the usage of Bitcoin, really from a standpoint of pure financial interactions that, as we know, don't require anybody to facilitate it. It's just a group of computers really talking to each other. And having one specific set of rules they follow to keep the blocks producing, keep things being validated. So I guess what time in your life did you kind of put together the power of Bitcoin? Because obviously cryptography has been around since long before it was popularized by Bitcoin. So before we kind of bridge the gap into more of these zero knowledge proofs and everything, when were you mentioned the conference in 2013 in San Jose, a Bitcoin conference, but I'm sure you had to have heard of Bitcoin before that.
Yes, I did. From time to time, some friends and family asked me as an expert on theoretical computer science, what do I make of this weird thing called Bitcoin? And I'm ashamed to confess that I just brushed it away. And I said,
Hmm.
without looking into it, I said, this must be nonsense and bullshit. And I only started looking into it as I was preparing my talk in 2013. But since I realized that it's something interesting, I came to love it, and with time also to understand why it's so unique and special and novel and important. But that was
Yeah,
only
absolutely.
afterwards, actually, for me.
Yeah, I mean, my interaction with Bitcoin began when I was early, I guess, in my college years. I had a friend tell me about it, and I downloaded Coinbase, and this was probably back in 2017, kind of before a lot of that super duper speculative stage. But my first interaction with Bitcoin was buying it and feeling immediately like I had just given my money away. It's like I put my money into Coinbase and then I got some digits on a screen, which is a really interesting idea, right? Because the banking system as it exists is really just that, right? But it just so happens to be that the money that we put into the system is represented on the screen, and it makes sense from that standpoint, and everything works and allows us to buy our coffees and such. But my first interaction was a deeply unsettling feeling of I just gave my money away. And I think that it's that feeling exactly that has continued to be present in my mind when me, as an advocate of blockchain, just as a user, I find a lot of trouble trying to relate it to people. And my frustration I have is, how do I explain the concept and most importantly the need of a system like cryptocurrency blockchain to common everyday people who are swiping their card left and right. They don't have any issues with it. They see no need to get educated and dive into something as deep as this is because everything works. So I want to hear from you. You've been in the space for so long, clearly a brilliant mind on screen. What is your take on basically bridging blockchain, Bitcoin, all these things to the next level? Because obviously it's so much more powerful than just, oh, I can send you money and I don't have to make sure anyone validates it. So what would you say to that?
Yeah, the way I explain Bitcoin these days would be, well, first of all, the way I explain crypto these days is to pull out my Argent metal credit card and show how I
Mhm.
do a transaction, at the local store, and how and then explain how I immediately see everything on my crypto, fully self-custodied, owned only by me account, and explain how this is different from the bank, and how there will never ever be anyone picking up the phone and calling me to ask about this transaction, or to say that I can't make it, or all sorts of stuff. How immediate it is to work with crypto. That's what I would like sort of use today to display it. But then, if I explain like what is unique about it, I would say that it's a little bit like gold, in the sense that just like gold is not controlled or dictated by any one government, and if you have in your possession a nugget of gold or a coin, it is yours in a very, very deep and true sense, which isn't the same for your uh, bank account, which could be freezed at any point. And actually, this is happening time and again in various countries. So Bitcoin and blockchain in general are reestablishing gold as thing that is not mediated by government, and which have true ownership of, but it does so over the internet, which is very, very magical, right? It's all bits. It's
Absolutely.
not some physically scarce element, and yet
Mhm.
it has a lot of the properties of gold.
Yeah, it is scarce, but of course, it has that durability aspect that is quite necessary when it comes to a currency. So, beyond that, I think just the idea of not having an intermediary is such a unique and really profound concept that is really, I think, hard for people to understand the idea of a trustless system. So, when you were researching for this talk you were giving in 2013, what was that talk about, and how did you begin connecting the dots that, "Oh, Bitcoin is, something that what I'm studying in math, this zero knowledge concept can come in," and then, of course, in 2013, learning about Bitcoin, obviously, you had to have come to realize, "Oh, this is something that can now apply to Ethereum as another layer." So, where in the world how in the world did you bridge those gaps? I wanna hear about that journey and that realization because it sounds really exciting.
Okay, so I'd like to try to put you into my mind. So I was doing this research that I understood extremely well, and it is mostly about the ability to scale and to achieve computational integrity, which means that
Mhm,
you can know that someone else that you don't trust has actually done a computation with integrity, meaning each and every step was carried out according to the program you have in mind. So that's what I call computational integrity. So I came from
mhm,
that world of dealing with ways to ensure computational integrity. And then I come to this Bitcoin place where it's all about integrity, but this integrity is achieved by everyone seeing everything that's happening, re-executing it and verifying it. So, right, I'm coming from this place where I have this math that can help you solve computational integrity and scale it to exponentially. That's where I'm coming from. And I come to this other world where it's all about integrity, but it's very slow and expensive. And there I had this sort of eureka moment. And I'm proud to say, I was the first to notice that proofs, these cryptographic proofs, are actually the best way to scale blockchain. So for me, everything just sort of clicked together. And I came and said, hey guys, I have this technology that is based on math. And just like Archimedes said, 3,000 years ago, give me a place to stand and I will move the earth. So for me, it was
mm.
give me a trusted, slow computational device, and I can move the earth and I can enforce integrity on all computation, on banks and nation states. So that's basically what clicked to me back then in May 2013, 12 years ago. And I just happened to be the right person in the right place and then to follow this lead and say, okay, there's something here that's very important. Let me drop everything else and pursue it.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, that must have felt like a "I am the chosen one" kind of moment.
Eh, I never felt a chosen one. I do feel extremely lucky, and I'm a very happy person. But I think that's my disposition, not chosen in any way.
Right, not chosen by any means, as you say, but most certainly there are very few people in the history of mankind that have the intellect to realize that they have an opportunity to change the way that something is, and not just change it, but improve it and allow it to have its potential realized. So that must have been exciting. I mean, was that something that you kind of realized straight out of the gate, like, wow, what I have been studying and devoting my life to up until now can apply immediately? Or was it a bit of a slow moving aspect, realizing how it could, but then coming more and more into the space, talking with more people, and then having that confidence really reassured for you? Was it a process, or was it kind of like a single aha moment?
It was pretty much a single aha moment. Meaning,
Yeah.
I think that part of my optimism and also doing research is a little bit like that. You sort of already imagine that everything will just work out. So even the one big error that I made in that talk, it's recorded, 2013, is that I said, so this was in May, right? Around
Mhm.
springtime. I said, by the end of summer, we will already have this thing out there and running in the wild. And that, of course, was a big mistake, right? It took many, many more years. We're now a decade and more later. So it took a little bit more time. So, yeah, I think I did feel immediately that this will be huge, that this is a technology that will become part of the bedrock of computation in society. And I still believe that. So I definitely, the optimist in me, the researcher, the visionary, definitely felt that this is something that will uh, that must happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm making some bold assumptions here, but my assumption is that the designers behind Bitcoin, Satoshi and the team of computer scientists that they were discussing with and talking about and sharing these researches and discoveries in addition to Ethereum, how did they overlook this? What is the key aspect that they missed that really, opened the door for somebody like you to come in and be like, I've got the solution?
So, okay, so Satoshi did refer a little bit to zero knowledge. Zero knowledge proofs have two aspects. The one that Satoshi was talking about is privacy. And back then, very few people in the research community believed that you can actually use these proofs to scale computation because they were very cumbersome, and people just didn't believe that this will work. And it actually took us a very long time to prove to the world that the particular technology that is called ZK Starks actually is immensely practical and useful in scaling. So Satoshi, even Satoshi, who did refer to zero knowledge proofs, spoke about the privacy aspects of them. But even then, the technology was a little bit too new to be used in practice. So he did want it, and then he, dropped off the radar, and we haven't heard any more about it. And
Mhm.
very few, even cryptographers, were sufficiently confident that you can use these cryptographic proofs not just for privacy, but actually to scale computation and to assert integrity over an exponential amount of computation, which is what, you know, to me was very clear because I was spending years doing this research and I really believed in it. So, and it took us a little bit of time. I mean, StarkWare was the first company to be founded with this goal in mind, and it took us a few years to convince, Ethereum and the rest of the world that ZK for scaling is the end game, which is the state we're at today.
Yeah. And I think that personally, that's what is truly so inspiring as I've been learning about Starkware and Starknet and StarkX and all of these things that you have been spearheading ever since diving. It sounds just full on into the space. And it's just this idea that for me, hearing about you and learning about you, it seems like you're the sole proponent of this. Obviously, I'm sure you would give credit to a lot of research and business partners and companions that you have. But you have, as you are saying, you have convinced the world that this is the solution to a problem that has been identified for years now. And I think that that's just so extremely compelling. And I want to dive in a little bit more to that. Just talk about your own belief system. I mean, obviously, the idea of integrity. Integrity is such a powerful word. And when it comes to building systems that should be trustless, number one priority should be integrity. And then I feel like, we talk about the trilemma, but there's that baked in, like, it must have full integrity behind it. There's no mistaking. And in order to build a system with integrity, that individual must have integrity themselves. So how were you raised? At what point did you feel like this was something so important to you and you began to really just live and breathe it, and it probably represented itself in your research papers and all of your work?
Well, anyone who does math research, I would say, cares a lot about the integrity because math has the ultimate integrity to it, right? The notion of a mathematical proof, which is completely, you know, no new understanding of physics or biology or the world or history will change the truthness of a mathematical theorem. So there's a lot of pursuit of integrity and elegance when you do math. Um, Now, integrity was beautifully defined by the author C.S. Lewis
Mm.
as meaning doing the right thing even when no one is watching. So, really, what this technology is about knowing that someone else is doing the right thing even when you're not watching. And what these mathematical proofs, what ZK Starks allow you to do, is to use math, which has the ultimate, virtue of integrity, in order to do just a little bit of work on a trusted computer, let's say on a blockchain. And by doing that little bit of work, cryptographic work of checking and inspecting these proofs, you actually can enforce integrity and know that an exponential amount of computation, the whole of Bitcoin's blockchain, from the Genesis block to the very latest block, all of it was operated with integrity according to the protocol specifications of Bitcoin. And you can do this, verify this whole proof in less than a second on a smartphone, right? That's the power of this technology. But you do just a little bit of work on a platform that you trust, that has integrity, and now you can assert integrity on some huge platform that you have no assumptions about. That's really powerful.
Very powerful for sure. So, kind of bridging the gap now, we kind of understand your introduction to Bitcoin and kind of the aha moment that you had. So, zero knowledge proofs, the idea of proving that you know the answer or you understand a concept or you have a secret without giving away the secret itself. Just the term zero knowledge already sounds high level and advanced. I'm sure you've got to have some simple ways that you explain this to more everyday people. So, and feel free to dive into that. But I still, every time I have an opportunity to talk with somebody, somebody like you who's deep into the, science aspect of this system, just why should people care about of Bitcoin and blockchain, and why should they understand? Like, I mean, my question to you is really just, how will people ever come to understand this system that you've created that's full of scalability and security, and it's all built around integrity? Because it's art, it's creative art, it's something that, if you haven't received any gifts or awards for, you should. But it's bridging the gap to my follow-up questions, but I'll just leave it at that. Just how do we get people interested in this without immediately overwhelming them with these concepts that just flip the switch of like, oh, that sounds complicated and confusing, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing?
Well, one way is to talk about the effects of this. It's a little bit like, how do you get people interested in all the complication that goes into the physics of, into physics, right? One way to explain it is to say, well, look at this airplane, right? It's made out of metal and it can fly in the sky, right, without falling. And that's just really amazing. And just by looking at that, you're sort of, wow, how does that work? Turns out there's a lot of math behind that amazing thing. So for these zero knowledge proofs for Starks, you would say, look, you can give Darth Vader control of processing transactions for Bitcoin for the next 24 hours. And as long as he provides you at the end of the day with a new set of the UTXO set and a Stark proof, you can trust that, right? Even though Darth Vader is like the ultimate bad guy who probably wants to confiscate and steal all the money. So if you think about that, that sounds like almost impossible. How can we trust that this new UTXO set, the new set of Bitcoin, has been derived with integrity by this person who clearly does not have integrity? And that by itself is like, how can we do that? Well, you start thinking about, you say, oh, I know what we're going to do. We're going to ask Darth Vader basically to give us all the receipts for every transaction that happened, and we will just check them one by one. But I'm telling you, no. He will process 1 billion transactions, and the amount of work you will do will be like processing one transaction. You will not have time to inspect 1 billion transactions, and still you will know that all of these 1 billion transactions happen with integrity. So if you start thinking about that thing, it's a little bit like this airplane flying in the air, where, why doesn't it fall? So here, how come Darth Vader won't be able to steal all of our money, all of our Bitcoin? You could easily do that, right? Create, in the UTXO set, one address for himself and put there 1,000 Bitcoin, right? What prevents him from doing this? And why can't he hide it among the 1 billion transactions that he's going to be processing? Well, now we have to talk. Just like with the airplane. You want to understand why it doesn't fall? Well, we're going to have to study a little bit and understand what goes on there. It's the same thing here.
Absolutely. And that's something that I think at the end of the day, some people will find a lot of interest in this. And to me, that's really what kind of stoked my interest was I mentioned early in this conversation my first interaction with cryptocurrency and how it left me feeling unsettled. And as I've been in the space now for years, I've seen it time and time again. Oh, just not necessarily buy, but involve yourself in some sort of way. And obviously it's easiest to just buy a dollar of some cryptocurrency perhaps, but put a little money out there and not for the sake of jumping and taking a leap before you understand something, but get your hands on it. Put your feelers out and start to stoke your own curiosity or your own creativity. And that sounds like something that is basically what makes mathematicians kind of click is understanding kind of what's really going on here. We can see what is at the face level, but if we dive deeper, do you happen to know the name of the concept? It's like a reverse funnel where the more you know about a concept, the more you understand how little you know and how much more there is to know.
I think it's attributed to Socrates or Apollo. Um, not Apollo. Aristotle or Socrates, who said,
Mhm.
now that I learned so much, I know how little I know. Um, Either Socrates or Aristotle said that. I can look it up.
Yeah. But either way, that is really, I think, the part of cryptocurrency that excites me and has probably intrigued so many to do much more than just, "Oh, I'm gonna buy a little bit," and, that really kind of leads me to the next question because a lot of Bitcoin is really just held and doesn't really do much more than sit in wallets, and probably, there's more going on Ethereum given the fact that it expands on the idea of just sending and receiving transactions. So my question to you in the next portion of this conversation is really just all about Starknet, StarkWare, and how it's enabling users. You mentioned how the zero knowledge concept was kind of thrown out early on because I think you used the word bulky, perhaps, but come to find out, it's actually, enabling the idea of compressing the transactions so that you can batch them together, send them back to the chain itself, and process it much more rapidly at significantly lower fees, saving energy, saving time, and so forth. So, what would you say is really changing the way that Bitcoin and Ethereum are interacting, and how people rather are interacting with Ethereum and Bitcoin thanks to the layer two coming in, such as Starknet, and just revolutionizing what's possible, really enabling the system.
Yeah, so today the costs of transaction on Ethereum are pretty low, but a few years ago during the NFT craze, right, um, people were paying about $40 to mint an NFT. At the same time, we, through this technology, were minting NFTs not at $40, but actually at one-fifth of a cent. So
Hmm.
this is 20,000 times cheaper um, on the user side to do it through this technology of Starks. And this was a system in operation, still is a system in operation, that was used by Immutable X, which has minted by now upwards of 200 million NFTs on Ethereum. Another example was the DYDX V3, which was a very popular, was the best DEX, perps DEX in the day. It was saving its users over $1 billion of dollars in fees on Ethereum, thanks to this
Hmm.
technology. So what we did is we took this technology and basically created a whole programming language and a layer that app developers can use to build applications for end users that saves them, 4 orders of magnitude on the fees that they're paying. And today you can use this through transacting on Starknet. You can there are a number of applications you can use, for payments, for trading. You can play games. You can focus and have consumer apps working on it, and it's all accessible to users daily.
Yeah. And the whole idea of NFTs is a whole other topic that we could really get lost in. So I guess, is this something that really feels seamless for non-technical users, or is it clear that you're interacting with kind of a layer two beyond Ethereum? What's kind of like the user process of interacting with Starknet?
It's very seamless because we have things like what's called smart wallets or account abstraction. It means that when you're transacting often or onboarding onto Starknet, you actually don't even know that you're using any sort of blockchain. I'll give one example. So there are by now, I think, over 1 million, students and high school students and university students, people all over the world, who, when they focus as part of their focus time studying for exams, they use a very popular application called Focus Tree. They Most of them
Hmm.
don't even know that every time they're using it, they're actually creating transactions on Starknet. Okay, so that's one example. I think tomorrow a new game will be launching, season one of a game called Eternum, that is going to
Okay.
bring on a lot of first time players. Most of them again won't be knowing that when they play this game, it generates transactions onto Starknet. People using the metal card by Argent, as I'm using, paying for my cup of coffee and transacting with groceries, they don't need to know that there's crypto. And certainly the grocer or the store you're purchasing stuff at doesn't know this. So by now, using stuff on Starknet is very, very seamless. When you need to, if you need to certify transactions, you often do it using your biometrics on your iPhone or Android phone. So it's really quite seamless these days.
Yeah, and that whole process of designing the user interface seems to be the biggest buzz in the world of cryptocurrency these days, is how do we abstract the blockchain? How do we get people to feel like it's a Web 2 experience without even, we were just talking about how we kind of want to almost dangle the carrot to get people to learn more, but at some level we really just want people to use this system that has, as we've discussed, it's a system of trust that doesn't use trust, and sometimes it's better to not get lost in the weeds. So this is a huge concept of abstraction between usability and what's actually going on under the hood, and I'm curious what your expectations are for the space to grow in the future. What is Starknet doing beyond what it's already done to continue to convince the world that this is the solution and this is why the solution needs to come sooner rather than later?
Yeah, so one thing is we're just going after building applications that end users will find value in, whether they know that this is related to crypto or not. Things related to payment, things related to gaming, to all sorts of consumer apps. Another thing that we're doing is we are bringing all of this scale and expressibility and good applications to Bitcoin. Right, currently Ethereum has a lot of very good L2s, but Bitcoin doesn't. And we're going to bring Starknet onto Bitcoin as well. That's a very big move for us for this year. There's a lot of excitement with that. Bitcoin is by far the largest asset, but it has very limited scale, and there's very limited stuff that you can do if you want to live by the Bitcoin standard with your day-to-day interactions. Do things like pay with your Bitcoin, lend against it, borrow money against it, save in Bitcoin, and do a whole bunch of things with it. So we want to solve that, and that could be another big, big unlock. Down the line, we would like to allow onboarding of many, many more people onto crypto, because we think it's a better way to manage your financials rather than entrusted with banks and centralized financial institutions.
Yeah. When did all of this begin to feel real for you? Obviously, I'm sure there was as we've discussed a few times already, there was an aha moment back in 2013. But obviously, the concept coming to life and being something that now you can, point a phone at somebody and say, look at what we've done, look at what you can do. What was the idea behind the whole bringing this to life? And when did it really start to feel real for you?
As I said, for me, it felt real from the first second. But that's because I'm an optimist, and I live in the future in my mind.
Yeah.
But every time there's something new that I can show my friends and family how it works, I just find that easier. just gets easier over time to bring others to this future that I feel I live in. So now, I can pay for my, I invite friends to a cup of coffee and I say, oh, I just paid for it with crypto. I can show them, crypto app that they don't even know that it's crypto app for playing games or for focusing as they study. And they say, oh, this is useful to me. Really, this is crypto, very interesting. I should, look more into this. I have friends who are looking for, let's say, how to take financial loans. And I say to them, oh, you could actually use crypto for that. And they say, really? I don't need to like fill 50,000 forms in my bank to get that. And I say, no, this actually works. And oh, what? I can get dollars in my bank account? Yes, you can. And this is a better way for doing it. And they sort of, with each of one of these conversations, and as time passes, it gets easier to convince them that this is something that actually works.
Yeah. And I would be a fool if I don't touch on artificial intelligence here because more and more we are seeing the need for verification and proof altogether. So for somebody me, because I'm still wrapping my head around artificial intelligence, where does blockchain really come in and how? I mean, a lot of people these days are saying that cryptocurrency blockchain is going to go hand in hand with AI, and it's necessary, almost like a truth machine of some sort. So, what could you tell me and obviously the viewers here about the future of AI and why really now could be the biggest moment in time for us to really start taking these technologies very seriously?
Yeah, so AI, we all feel its presence already, but what if you would like to have an AI system that has sufficient integrity that you can actually, let's say, give your money to it or have it arbitrate something that has immense value for counterparties? Well, for that, you would probably want something that has enough integrity and you can trust, like a blockchain. But then actually running these AI machines, that's a vast amount of computation. And you can't have the blockchain running AI today. It can hardly process the transactions that it needs to process, right? Well, that's exactly where Starks come in, because you can actually have the blockchain verify the arbitration of AI, or that it handled your funds with integrity, and then all of the massive computation done by AI will be done off chain, but you can still trust it with its result because you can verify the integrity of that result using Starks on chain. And this is something that is already taking place. So I know of a number of very promising existing companies and also new startups that are exactly tackling this problem of making efficient Stark proofs for the correct inference and even learning of huge AI models. So we'll definitely get there.
Yeah. That's one of those topics that I think, again, some people will never get lost in because they'll just know that artificial intelligence is out there, and some will probably even say that, oh, we've already had that for years, right? Like chat bots in the bottom right of our screen. And now the fact that artificial intelligence is coming in and providing or really creating images and videos in now even on Twitter or any platform where you read text, I already am looking at things and I'm wondering, interesting, this seems like it was written by ChatGPT or something like that. And to me, I think that is kind of a topic that lives independently of blockchain and cryptocurrency. And I'm every day I'm trying to connect the dots closer and closer to how cryptocurrency comes in and makes artificial intelligence something that we can put our trust into. So, where do you see artificial intelligence going to, and what are some areas maybe that blockchain is really missing right now that perhaps Stark could come in and enable a brand new system, brand new wave that, again, isn't just making the internet right, but is now impacting artificial intelligence, and things are just being done with integrity?
Yeah, so tomorrow I think this Eternum season one is launching. It's a new MMO game on
Hmm.
Starknet. Should be very fun to play. I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but if it's still going on, please look it up. Eternum, you guys out there listening to this, Eternum. Um, and when you play it, actually, a lot of AI is behind the scenes playing on your behalf, and then things are being, verified on chain. So that's one example that is actually coming out right now. There's another cool example again on Starknet, which is an AI backed smart contract called Haiku that actually allows you to manage your sort of Uniswap AMM position as a liquidity provider and rebalance things on the fly as prices move using AI and proving everything. So those are two examples, right? You could, instead of you needing, if you're doing some financial activity, let's say market making, you want to rebalance your positions. So you can entrust this now to a smart contract that will have AI running it, and it will make decisions maybe even better than you. And you can trust your funds with it because everything it does will be proved and then verified on chain. So it's not going to steal your funds. It's not going to do stuff that it shouldn't be doing. Those are some examples of agents acting financially or within the context of the game on your behalf and doing so with integrity, thanks to the ability to verify them with Starknet.
Yeah. And that is an opportunity I think that artificial intelligence is going to come in and really bolster usability as well as just overall adoption of having a system that people can trust. And yes, it's artificial intelligence, but people can trust it or it's accepted as trustworthy. And therefore, people, instead of having to go through the risk of, buying the asset, of verifying that they're transferring their funds and doing everything properly, they can have a personal assistant. My background is in finance and personal financial planning, and there's such great value in having an individual sitting across the table from you. But when it comes to cryptocurrency and the educational kind of curve that it kind of takes to really understand what's going on, it just gets in the way of people just using the technology that is really beneficial for all of us. So the idea of bringing this in and complementing cryptocurrency, it stretches much farther beyond just the idea of ensuring that, oh, this text that somebody wrote was a human rather than a robot.
Yes, agreed.
So, as we kind of come to a close here, I just want to end on the bigger picture of what is in front of the world, but specifically in front of Starknet. And I'm curious about for you personally as well. I guess, how are you deciding where to put your focus on? How are you deciding what your next moves are and what guides your day to day?
Okay, so our vision our vision is that integrity is something that should never be assumed, right? Today, when you work with your banks, you're sort of assuming their integrity. You're hoping that they act with trust. But with our technology combined with blockchain, integrity is something that will never be assumed, but rather enforced publicly and upheld by all, right? Because someday your nation state, your bank will make an assertion, a promise to you, and instead of saying trust us, we'll stand by it when you need us, they will take this assertion, this guarantee, they will convert it into a smart contract and put it on a blockchain that will enforce it upon them and the rest of us and uphold their integrity. So our vision is that integrity should never be assumed, but rather be demonstrated publicly and upheld by all. And we are trying with our limited resources. We have a company of 200 employees. It's pretty large, but not that large, to pursue this in its purest form and as quickly as possible. So we deployed first on Ethereum. We're now deploying on Bitcoin. Those are the two largest blockchains out there right now, the two biggest asset classes. And we are trying to massively reach as many users and give them this technology so that ultimately they will truly own their life, own their actions, own their assets in this very important digital sphere, right? That's where we're heading towards.
Awesome. So for yourself personally, I'm sure with 200 employees under your watchful eye, where are you spending the most of your time?
Today, it's listening to my very smart team, encouraging them to focus on what is important. For us this year, it is Bitcoin, um, giving Bitcoin holders and users ways to live by the Bitcoin standard in a better way on Starknet. to do things like payments, lending, saving for your pension, transacting, doing financial activities, all of that. Also playing games, having a good time. Um,
Mhm.
that's the main thing that I'm encouraging my team as we move along and just improve the scale of the technology, open source it to the world, offer more teams the ability to use it.
Yeah, that's something that is so important is the idea of open sourcing something. I think that decentralization doesn't mean it's not under a person's control, but rather it's broadly used, it's broadly accepted, and it's accessible to all people. And I know that that is something that you live by, Ellie, and I'm very excited for how Starknet is going to continue to move forward. So, moving now, kind of just to a final call to action. Where can people get involved? And if you want to touch at all on the Stark token, on governance and community power, feel free to share your philosophy on those things. And where should people get in? Where should people get involved? Should they buy some Stark tokens? Should they start learning Cairo, which is the language that you guys have basically constructed? Where can people get started?
Yeah, so first of all, you can Google Starknet. You can follow me. My Twitter handle is just like my name, Eli Ben-Sasson or Eli Ben-Sasson. One word. You can follow Starknet. Um, yeah, about like the STRK token, it has three. It is used for three things for governance. So if you care about Starknet and want to influence the way it moves forward, that's one thing. It is used. You can stake it. You can earn rewards for that, and with every upcoming version, you will be asked to do more and more in terms of operating the network. Signing on the layer two integrity of blocks until they are approved to layer one, and later on also operating a node and participating in basically proposing blocks and also generating proofs for them. So if you care about these things, that just like people, a lot of people feel very passionately about being Bitcoin miners. For that, you need to basically buy some hardware and use electricity. In the context of Starknet, you need to somehow obtain some STRK tokens in order to be able to stake them and be part of the operating network. So there are three utilities. One is governance. The other is staking for operating the network, and the third is for paying fees. So if you want to transact on Starknet, either directly or indirectly, you need to hold STRK tokens. Of course, I'm not giving any investment advice. You should be doing your own research. Um, Starknet is going to be the very first layer two that scales both Ethereum and Bitcoin at the same time. So if you find there's something that is unique and appealing to you as a user, you should definitely look into this. This is something unique and new. It exists nowhere else. And I do invite you to, be a part of the ecosystem that operates this network. If you're a builder, our programming language, the language that is used in order to write transactions, to build applications on Starknet, it's called Cairo. It's a next generation ergonomic Rust-like programming language. I encourage you to read about it. You can dig up the Cairo lang and start building applications for users.
That's wonderful. The idea of blockchain, of cryptocurrency, is probably understood at much greater depth from those that are building it, such as yourself. So, truly, my hat goes off to you and everyone who works for Starknet or StarkWare. Apologize for maybe the terminology mishap there. But altogether, just the idea of building something with integrity is going to be paramount for, I think, the progress of all of us as humans. And I guess my final encouragement and really my request for you, Ellie, is not only keep going, but as we close here, what is the final message or advice that you would give to anybody who is maybe just interested, maybe just starting out, or maybe somebody who is completely head over heels, over involved in their own project and feels lost in the weeds? What's kind of that guiding light or that North Star that you can kind of share as we close here to keep people moving?
First of all, if you just started and you just want to know what this is about, the one thing you should probably do is listen to the Clear Crypto podcast that we come out with. That's a very good place to be informed about. Well, generally, like if you want to learn a little bit more about crypto and certainly about our technology. So the Clear Crypto podcast is something that I recommend. And what you should know is that, well, first of all, crypto is new, has a lot of potential. Do your own research, follow things that are fundamentally in line with what crypto's true value proposition is, which is decentralization, broadness, true ownership of assets. Beware of things that are, you know, going to the moon only to drop 2 minutes later. If things don't make sense to your mom and dad, then beware of what you're doing. And join us for the journey.
Love it. Well, Ali, thank you so very much for your time today. The time here
Thank
has
you,
been
Stephen.
invaluable, and I really hope that our viewers here will continue on and get involved and
Thank you.
watch that podcast. I think that we live in an era, obviously, of podcasts, and it takes individuals that have stories that you've shared today that really compel people to get involved and don't just stop at the door, but go in, check all the rooms. And time is our number one most valuable asset. And the fact that I see you using your time to change the future. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here and sharing your vision.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Take
Yeah.
care.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the ACC Podcast. Hope you enjoyed this one. Check out the screen in front of you to view more. And as always, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to make sure that you don't miss the next one. See you later.